So the gut feeling for me is by far my biggest asset, and again, I've been proving me many times to be the right thing to follow. Sometimes when you become too thoughtful of things, you also lose, like your courage. And I think it's important to sometimes listen to your gut feeling and follow that courage. Go with your guts. Again, listen more to your gut feelings. Like it's in our DNA. Again, if it doesn't feel right, it isn't right. Like again, stop looking only at the process and try to feel what it actually feels like.
So let's get starting by meeting my guest for today, Morten Grubak, VP Creative Direction at Zalando. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy that you're here and about everything we're going to talk about the brand, the new branding at Zalando, and of course the pieces you brought. So, by saying so, the three pieces. What did you bring? Let's go later on to the story. So, what is the close to your heart piece? Of course, now that we are doing a new kind of setup with video, I already kind of had a little
Yeah.
glimpse. So, what did you bring?
Because first of all, when you invited me to this podcast, I think it was not a really good medium for me to bring my personal piece, which is actually a picture, and it's not like that I'm actually have this original at home, but it's just like
Nice.
for all the people only listening to the podcast, it's a picture frame, and it's inside of it. It's like there's a poster of Andy Warhol and Jean-Michel Basquiat exhibition that was in New York back in the early 2000s. But not in the early 2000s, in the 90s, sorry. But it represents because I'm always been into art and I collect art. So if you would visit my home in Copenhagen, you would see every wall is basically tapestry with art all over the place. So it's a hobby, and this specific picture here is actually one that I have tattooed on my leg. So it's very special to me.
I really like, and I always envy people who have this eye for art and you go into people's places and you see like amazing art on the wall. And I was like, I wish I would have kind of more of this sense.
Yeah.
So why is this one specific, the one that you brought?
I think it's just about the history around art. Once you get into collecting art and getting really interested in art, like obviously the stories around it, it's obviously sometimes much bigger than the pieces themselves. And especially, I think this is probably the biggest within pop culture and pop art you can get, right? And still, the story has a lot of downfall to it as well, right? I think Basquiat was really admiring, obviously, Andy Warhol, and at the end of it, it became his downfall as well, right? So I think the version that I have tattooed on my leg is a redrawing of that poster where it's actually Basquiat hitting Andy Warhol with a fist.
Yeah. So this one, we actually just see them both in position
Yes,
now.
they are like looking like boxers. It's like mimicking a boxing sort of like poster, but then because of the story, I just felt like I wanted to give Andy Warhol a little bit back. So the drawing that I have tattooed on my leg is actually Basquiat actually with boxing gloves hitting Andy Warhol, and the glasses fly off. So it's a little bit of an iteration of this drawing here.
I like it. So, okay, because first I thought it was this just in big, but so it is actually from the exhibition.
They collaborated really closely, and they even shared, like the same atelier at some point. I think again, they became really good friends, but it was just like a toxic relationship.
Okay.
And so again, great art came out of it, but obviously the rest is history, right? But I think for me, art is just like I always loved spending time with art because it just feels so much like raw emotions on sort of like a canvas.
Yeah.
And I think the thing about both Basquiat and Andy Warhol is that they're very intuitive in their way of actually producing art. Like it goes really fast. And actually, the only reason why Andy Warhol respected Jean-Michel was because he was actually faster than Andy Warhol himself, which was quite fast. So I think the ability to turn off your brain and just listen to your guts and just like let your gut instinct actually create the work for you is actually something that I admire a lot. So when I look at my own collection, is also very much represented about like from artists who's actually working a lot from their subconscious and working really fast, not very detailed pieces, oil paintings of realistic kind of things. That's not my vibe. Like I want to see things that feels like emotional expression in various forms and in various mediums.
Do you also kind of work this way on if you see the way that they working listening to their guts and being more of this impulsive,
Yeah.
Is it also a way you would say that you work also?
100%. I think again, being creative is a lot about gut feeling. It's always there's always a risk in what you do, or else you're not pushing it far enough. So there needs to be like it's a little bit like an AI to just collect data, and at some point there comes an output out of it, right? Like we are also walking around AIs that kind of like live life and sort of like collect a lot of data, and from that you're making your calculation of things. And so the gut feeling for me is by far my biggest asset, and again, it's been proving me many times to be the right thing to follow.
Hmm.
Sometimes when you become too thoughtful of things, you also lose, like your courage. And I think it's important to sometimes listen to your gut feeling and follow that courage.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Have you had any time a project or something that you actually said, this was really a very impulsive thing that I did, and I'm super proud because it really came out how I imagined, or
A few years back, I've I created the first digital clothing line for people to actually acquire directly from an e-commerce platform.
Mhm.
So again, the idea was back in like mid like tens, like 2015, like where we saw the rise of influencers, and a lot of it like got turned up in terms of like how much people are consuming fashion because of obviously social media and the ability not to show the same outfit twice on a post, right?
Mhm.
And that's obviously super harmful for the environment. And I realized how many people are actually buying clothing from an e-commerce platform, wearing it, and then take a picture and then sending it back again. And obviously, the signal was sent back to the factories, and then they start overproducing, and then we ended up with a lot of dead stock, right? So I had this idea about if you could create like digital fashion for people to sort of like buy and get like superimposed onto their pictures, and then they can post that. So again, being creative with fashion without actually harming the environment.
So, but moving forward to your next piece.
Yes.
So, you also brought a piece that is based or that is attached to your career.
Yeah.
So, what is the piece? I see you didn't bring it. So,
No,
what is it?
but I can show it. It's again, it's a digital product, and as you can hear, like I'm still super fascinated about technology and how
Hmm.
technology can help us push forward, but also how it can be used for the greater good for the world. So, the piece that I want to highlight here is one that I worked on not that many years ago, 2 years ago, like back in 22, I think in February when Russia invaded Ukraine. I think all of us were just like completely shocked. And I remember some of the first pictures that came out of the war was obviously like tanks, like smashed houses, people losing their homes, their families, and everything, right? But then, like 2 weeks in the war, like some really, really weird pictures started to occur in the media as well. And there was actually kind of like statues and historical monuments being wrapped up with the bubble plast, like insulation, sort of like mattresses and sort of like tape and all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
And it looked a little bit like standing mummies in some way, like wrapped up. And I was a little bit asking myself, like, why are they spending their time sort of like wrapping up these historical artifacts when there's bombs falling, right? And if I had to sort of like choose between sort of like get my ass out of the country
Yeah.
and start wrapping stuff up, I would probably pick the first one.
Hmm.
But then I stumbled upon an interview with a historical professor who mentioned that the easiest way to actually erase a nation is actually just by destroying their national artifacts, right?
Okay.
So suddenly it made sense to me why they were wrapping up everything, even though like it couldn't protect it from a missile, right? So at the same time, I was working at Vice Media and I was hitting up the innovation department, and we were working with a technology and an app called Polycam.
Hmm.
So Polycam is an app that you can use when you're creating video games. So for instance, if you want to create a chair inside the video game, instead of like building that chair from scratch in a 3D program, like Polycam is an app that allows you through your camera to turn on the camera, find the chair that you want, push play, and then move around the chair with the app. And then the film is then sent up to the cloud, and then an AI is looking at the video, and then it creates a perfect 3D render of the chair in
Okay.
one-to-one size with texture and everything. So I was asking myself, could that technology actually be used to actually create a digital blueprint for the people in Ukraine of all the historic artifacts, so they didn't have to wrap everything up, but they can actually just like scan it,
Yeah.
and then if if shit hits the fan, then they're actually able to recreate it from that digital.
Yeah, it's not the same because it's not this story, like doesn't have the time, but at least they can recreate and build it up again at one point.
Exactly,
So,
because when a bomb hits, like nothing can actually protect it. You can put as many sandbags around it, like at some point it will get lost. But I think it's more important for them to have something to build stuff from, because again, Ukraine is an old country and they actually have a lot of history. So some of the churches and
yeah,
some of their sort of like monuments are like hundreds of years old. So I think it's more important for the nation to actually be able to rebuild, even though it is losing a lot of the patina, but actually being able to put it there and still own it digitally and make sure that they actually have it in life size. So so again, the big issue with that idea was just like Polycam is a tech company based in California, and the app itself is actually quite expensive to
hmm,
run. So it's for actually you to get access to all of the features, it's around 100 euros. So that's obviously, and again, looking into the penetration of the app in Ukraine was zero.
yeah,
So we went to Polycam and asked if they were up to doing a partnership and sort of like bring this technology to Ukraine. And they actually ended up donating the tech to the
nice.
people in Ukraine. So if the app was downloaded in the area of Ukraine, you could use it for free and again, obviously scan as much as you want and storage it in the cloud. So we reached out to UNESCO. Um, and we got a collaboration up with them, so they actually became the voice and actually the people running the project in Ukraine.
Hmm.
So obviously when they speak, it gets a lot of attention. It got a lot of press, so people start downloading the app, and within weeks we had a huge amount of downloads. And I think the library today contains around 40,000 different artifacts
Nice.
that's been scanned and stored in the cloud. Obviously, technology is invented for one thing, and then when you put it to use in another thing, it actually do a lot more
That's
good,
true.
right?
Not technology does not only have a bad side; it can also be
No, no,
used
no,
for
not
a lot of good
at
things.
least not in my world. I love technology and I love the things that it can do.
Now, moving to the third piece that you brought,
Yeah.
your Zalando piece.
My Zalando piece is also a very visual piece because it's actually on outside the building and it's everywhere in this company, right? We're gonna talk about the brand refresh, which I'm super happy about. Like changing the face of a company, it's actually something that normally takes a lot of time, but actually there's a lot of bold people in this company. So when we actually had the right opportunity, we pushed the button and we're
Uh-huh.
seeing it already now actually just really working for us. So again, rewinding time a little bit, as a creative director, I've only been here for a year, right? Probably one of the first thing every creative director does is that they want to change the company logo,
Let me
right?
put my signature on it.
Exactly, right. And maybe that was a little bit too bold arriving here, but
But you did it, and here we are. We're changing, or the logo was changed.
one of the things that actually connected both the brand refresh and obviously the new brand positioning is focusing around the brand promise, which is around helping people be more confident. And I think again, if you look at our corporate identity and sort of like the Zalando visual distinctive assets, it wasn't that confident, right? Every time we showed up, we always like had great photography, and then we always tried to place our logo in the corner or sort of like make the triangle smaller, and
And put the word, like you have everything together. And
it wasn't really confidence,
hmm,
right? So as soon as we unlocked that idea about like delivering confidence to our audience, we also need to show up confident. So meaning like, what does confident look like when you're actually talking about an identity?
hmm,
It means like owning it, scaling it up, make sure that people could see it from 100 meters away, right? So now when you're seeing the out of homes and sort of like our executions, the brand mark, the play button is super size. It's
hmm.
big and it's beautiful, right? And the same goes with the word mark. It's also, it can scale up.
I like how actually it goes back to confidence because
Yeah,
that was something I was not aware of. That's why one of the reasons also
yeah,
to really be able to showcase way better the brand.
of course.
Of course, when I saw, I mean, I've been at some years at time, I was like, why are we getting a new brand? Why do we need it? But of course, now having actually also this information behind, like, hey, there is way more behind it. We don't have to write Zalando. We can just put the play button. We can also just write Zalando somewhere if you want to.
Exactly. Yeah.
we are flexible, but we can be way more bold, and we want to be bold. We
Exactly.
want to be out there.
Exactly. Like you have to own yourself, right? And you have to just put yourself out there and be proud of what you do, right? And I think with that new brand refresh, it makes it a lot easier. One of the other things that we also changed was the orange color.
I was going to
Yeah.
ask that, yes. But I do have to say, I remember there was back in the days once also a tweak in the orange color, but now actually it's a great change actually.
Yeah, it
It's
became more rich, it became more burnt, it became much deeper. I think changing the color is not an easy thing either, right? Like you have to look at 1,000 shapes and then you have to figure out if it actually translate good enough from digital to physical to sort of like, again, printing on stuff and all these kinds of things to a building, right? And I think we're still trying to figure out the balance of different sort of like mediums and how the color actually presents itself.
what was the most difficult or what was the biggest challenge in this
Yeah,
process?
I think most people probably just see obviously the play button, the new orange color, and then obviously the new like typeface, right? We're also creating a bespoke typeface for Zalando, which is going to be rolled out probably when this podcast is live. Then we're probably using it all of us, right? But I think that takes a lot of time to really understand how do you create a very bespoke but a yet very versatile typeface that can work in all kinds of different mediums, who can also help sort of like give identity to a lot of the propositions on site and all these kind of things. And then there's the motion language, obviously, right? Like as we're moving into inspiration entertainment, like motion becomes much more important. We want to mimic, we want to sort of like create like motions that actually evoke emotions. So actually the whole motion language around the app itself and sort of like the brand and how it shows up and these kind of things actually is taking a lot more time than it actually does to make the logo itself. So these kind of things is sort of like the hidden updates, but it means a lot for I guess the audience when they see and feel that we're putting everything to live in the app as well.
Did you also do user tests? Did you actually show different logos to different customers? I mean, I know we have testing rounds, we have test groups. How many rounds did you do them? And
Yeah,
how
for sure.
many and
Like
how did they
yes,
go?
yes. Obviously, on this assignment, like we needed to get a green light from consumers. So
Have you even tried to even go away from orange, or was that never an option?
we tried as well. Yeah. Like we started from a blank canvas, but I think again we also realized that the equity is built in the orange play button. I think once we supersized it,
Uh-huh.
it just felt like immediately again back to that gut reaction. This is amazing, and this is what actually feels fresh, and this is what could actually help us again build a strong connection with our consumers.
Thank you so much for being here.
My
But before we
pleasure.
wrap up, I mean, I did ask you also for one more thing, and that is for everyone watching the dare to. What should people dare to do more or start doing?
Go with your guts. Again, listen more to your gut feeling. Again, it has like 5 billion years of experience. Like it's in our DNA. Again, if it doesn't feel right, it isn't right. Like again, stop looking only at the process and look like and try to feel what it actually feels like. So I think that would be my recommendation. Dare to go with your guts.
I really like that. And I mean, from the initial conversation, I kind of already
Yeah.
thought that that would be the direction. Thank you so much. Thank you for being my guest today and sharing your pieces and also the brand logo.
Thank you so much for having me.